Greetings, beautiful viewers. This is Smitten, and welcome to another episode of Gettin to Smitten. This is episode 4. We are discussing ages 7 through 9. Last episode, I said ages 4 and 5, but it ended up being ages 4, 5, and 6 because I was 6 years old whenever I was in kindergarten. What grade were you in whenever you were 7 years old, Smitten? Well, in first grade, I was 7 years old, and it was the year 1994. Yeah, that was right. A lot of you weren't even born yet. A lot of you were probably born this year. So let's talk about some of the things that happened in first grade. First grade, it was a strange period because I switched schools a lot. Kindergarten, I was going to a completely different school. I was actually in a completely different city for kindergarten. First grade, I was in the city that I'm currently living in, but I was at a different school than I was at for like the rest of the story. It's a little foggy as far as my memory goes because there's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of stuff moving around, a lot of people moving around, more importantly. So the one thing that I do remember out of first grade, and I think is probably been the most impactful on me as an adult looking back, was this day I was coming home really late. I remember walking in, I'm 7 years old, remember this, I'm 7 years old, walking into my apartment that I lived with my mother, my biological mother, my stepfather, and my new stepsister. By this point, my little sister is 2 years old, and so she's a toddler. And the house is dark, and the first thing I see whenever I walk into my dark house is my toddler sister screaming and crying on the ground. And I was just kind of like, what the fuck's going on? Where's my mom? Like, my sister's screaming. Is something wrong? Where's mom? And so I was like, that's weird because normally she's home. And so I started like looking around my dark house and I was like, what the hell is going on here? And I couldn't find her until I heard this like sloshing sound. And I was just like, oh, there's somebody in the bathtub. Like, I don't know who it is, but there's somebody upstairs. So I gathered all of my 7-year-old courage and I marched right up those stairs. And I opened up the door to my bathroom and I saw my mom sitting in the bathtub with like chunks of vomit floating on top of the water. And I don't know why that image stuck in my head, and it still does to this day. It was just like, I remember being super dark, and I just remember looking in to the bathroom, and there's just vomit floating on the top, and my mom sitting in there, and I was just like, what the fuck is going on here? Oh, my sister's downstairs screaming, I'm hungry, like what is something needs to happen here, and I don't think my mom can help. Alcoholism is a thing that exists and is a problem for many families, and my family has definitely been one of those. So at a very young age, I realized that I'm gonna have to be responsible, or at least partially, for caring for my sister. Whatever it is that mom is doing, it's interfering with her ability to help care for, her kids. So what I did is I went downstairs and I picked up my sister and I changed her diaper and I fed her, I took care of her, and I put her to bed, and then I put myself to bed. And that was like the first time I remember ever having to do something like that. And as you guys will see, it's something that I continue to do. I had to be responsible at a very young age, and I'm very proud of myself for having the courage to not only go figure out what the problem was, but I realized that, hey, I'm a big sister. I'm responsible since I've been around here a little bit longer than my sister has. Like, I'm responsible to at least, help her with what I know. My sister and I we were pretty close. We got pretty close because of that. So that was first grade. I don't remember anything except for this one event. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the second grade. Second grade, probably one of my favorite time periods of at least my elementary school experience. Elementary school, for all of my international viewers, elementary, where I'm from in Oklahoma, is classified from first grade to fifth grade. So yeah, I started going to this new school in second grade, and I loved it. It was relatively small compared to the last school I had gone to. I had the kids there were significantly more, let's say, cheery. Like, there weren't nearly as many bullies or anything like that. I don't know. I felt at home right away, and I think it was because how big the playground was. It was massive. It was like the first thing I remember about that school, and the teachers were really interactive. Like, with the smaller class sizes, of course, you're gonna have more time for that one-on-one interaction. And as we find out later on in this story, I'm ADHD as balls, dude. And so I really need that like close up, super personal, interactive, one-on-one attention especially when it comes to my education to really get me kicked into gear. That's just the kind of person that I am. Second grade was a lot of fun. I met my first best friend. I remember very clearly the day that I found my best friend. I was walking down the street of this new neighborhood that I had. I went down to the left on my block, and the very last house was my best friend's house. And I recognized her from school. I was like, hey, you're in my class, aren't you? And she was like, oh my god, yeah. And so she was like, do you want to play? I was like, hell yeah. And she had this like huge like jungle gym in her backyard, and so we played on that a whole bunch. And then I was just like, I kind of like making mud pies. I kind of like making mud pies. Is that weird? And my best friend was like, no, dude, I love making mud pies. I was like, this girl is actually incredible. And so I can't tell you how many hours I spent with this girl making mud pies in the back and just making it pretty and trying out different consistencies of the mud to see which would actually like end up baking. Like, we wouldn't put it in the oven, but we would definitely set them out in like little pie tin trays. We would set it out in the sun for it to harden. Some of them wouldn't. Some of them would just be sloppy and gross forever, but some of them actually hardened into like these little discs, and then we would just throw those around the neighborhood because we're shitty kids. Moved into this new neighborhood, this new house, and I found a friend. What I also found out was right behind my best friend's house there was a creek, like an actual creek that ran all the way along my neighborhood. And me and my best friend, we used to go down there every single day because there was like this bridge that it wasn't like a huge bridge. It was just like a tiny little over a creek bridge, but it was like pretty fancy because it was bridging two neighborhoods together. And we used to like slide down, the side there, and we would just walk up and down this creek, and we would just, talk and hang out and like just play with all the different stuff that was around the creek. And that little spot actually I have super fond memories of. It's kind of gross that I played in a creek as a kid. Now that I'm an adult and I realize what creeks are, now that I know what that is, I'm like, oh god. So disgusting. There's so many germs. But like as a kid, it was my fern gully. It was the place that I could go where I didn't have to worry about making sure my sister had her homework done, and all of her chores were done, and I didn't have to worry about making dinner and making sure we went to bed on time. Like, I could just be a kid at the creek, and I think that's why I have such fond fucking memories of it. In second grade, I decided that my real name is Bailey. I no longer wanted to be called or referred to as Bailey in second grade, and so I chose a new name for myself, and it was Bonnie. I chose the name Bonnie, and I don't remember why specifically I chose the name Bonnie. I think I just had like heard it over the weekend, and I was just like, that's gonna be my name. That's my name now. And so I literally signed all of my homework as Bonnie. And I remember my second grade teacher being like, who's Bonnie? And I was just like raising my hand like, I got you right here. It's me. Come on. Show me my A. What else did we do in second grade? Oh, yeah. So I told you guys before, my parents are divorced. And so every other weekend I would go to my father's house and spend time with him. And during my second grade year, my father started really getting into martial arts, and specifically one type of martial arts called Kyokin-ryu. I don't know much about it now in my adult life. I just know and remember the name because I remember being like, that is like a badass name. So forgive me if I'm being disrespectful. It's definitely not intended. So my dad was getting really into martial arts, and he was a huge Bruce Lee fan. So the reason why that information is relevant is because I got into my first fight. My first and only fight, as it turns out, like physical, fisticuous, like mano-a-mano fight with another human being. And it was a little boy. And let me tell you the story. So we're coming in from recess in second grade. So I'm just being my happy, cheery little blonde self, in second grade. And I'm coming in after recess. They're calling for everybody to come in, and I'm just doing my job. And all of a sudden, and for no particular reason, somebody starts choking me. So I literally feel somebody grabbing me from behind and just choking me. And I remember looking over like this, he's like, "City, you're choking me like this." And I remember looking around like, what the hell is happening to me? And I look over behind me and I see this shitty little kid. I hated this motherfucker. He was blonde, he had a fucking rat tail, because all the gross boys had fucking rat tails. Well, little did he know that my father he started teaching me self-defense like just that weekend, and my dad was teaching me how to flip people over my back. So this kid's choking me out from behind, and the first thing that I did is I looked at him, I went like this, I took his hands and I flipped him over my tiny little back. I flipped him over my back and he fell onto the ground, and I kicked him in the balls and I walked away. And this happened on the playground in front of everybody. Everybody saw this, dude. And I just remember just being like, oh God, I'm gonna get in so much trouble. I'm gonna get expelled. I don't know how I'm gonna explain this to my family. I mean, he totally fucking started it, but how am I gonna prove, that he started it and it wasn't me, right? Because it's his word against mine. Well, as it turns out, I did get pulled into the principal's office about it, and I did get in trouble because of the other kids on the playground. I kind of got out of that situation. But we're moving on now to the third grade. There are 3 important things that happened to me in third grade, and one of them being that my second sister is born this year, and we've all got really fucking weird names, and I wish I could tell them to you, but I'm not sure if they're comfortable with me doing that, so I'm not going to tell you what they are, but we all have really weird names, and she was the perfect baby sister. Whenever my baby sister was born, I loved her immediately because I understood what was happening. You know what I mean? I think prior with my first sister, my middle sister, I think that was more of a, oh my God, you're new and what does that mean? Kind of situation. I was so young, I didn't know how to process it. Well, when my baby sister was born, I knew exactly what was going on. I knew what it meant, and I was really excited to be a big sister again. I remember going to California for the very first time this year with my mother and my stepfather and my 2 baby sisters, and we went to California. And my grandma and my grandpa, as on my mother's side, are like the coolest fucking people I have ever met. They're like totally my grandfather is passed now, but they used to be like this like insanely adorable hippie couple from California that did paper mache with us kids, and would tell us stories about the surf wolf. And I will relay that story to you guys next episode, whenever it actually came into fruition, this story. But he would tell us the most wild, insane stories, and he would take us out to McDonald's and like get us ice cream, and he was like the bad grandpa that was like so much fucking fun to grow up with, and he was just like the life and light of the family, and it was really cool to go out to see him in California. I didn't really spend much time with him, so it was like this super awesome thing. In California, I learned how to boogie board, which I totally thought was surfing. So whenever I came back from California, I remember being like, I learned how to surf. I learned how to surf in California, and all you little nerds here in Oklahoma, y'all don't even know nothing about this surfing business, right? And I thought I was like the coolest kid on the block, and I was. The third biggest thing that happened in third grade, which I think it's not telling of my future, of future things, but it is like it's the first near like fatal accident I remember having. One of like my closest cousin the cousin that I got the closest to, lived in a completely different city for a really long time. So I would go out there to see her on occasion, and they lived on this giant Black Angus farm, and it was just acres upon acres. There's hundreds of acres of farmland and creeks and ponds and woods and cliffs and cattle. It was like a playground, like the biggest playground for me whenever I was growing up. I used to love going to her house because her house was massive and she always had so much fun stuff to play with. And her dad would let us go out on the 4-wheeler, which we did this day. Let me tell you about the cliff. Now, it wasn't a cliff in the sense of there was thousands of feet between the top and the next bottom. You know what I mean? No, it's nothing like that. It was definitely on closer to the edges of like 4 stories, I would say. Just complete drop off where it's just it's like farmland, forest, drop off, and then more forest down below. Well, me and my cousin were going out on the 4-wheeler this day, because that's what you do in Oklahoma as kids for fun. You go out on the 4-wheeler, and we were just hanging out, just going around the different spots on the farmland, and we got to the cliff, and I was like, yo, we could totally climb down, because there's a little pond at the very bottom, a little bit further back. There's a pond down there, and I wanted to go see if we couldn't like catch frogs or something, whatever little 9-year-old Bailey wanted to do. Or my cousin wasn't really like okay with it. She kind of wanted to just like go back because it was getting kind of late. And I was like, no, we can do it just really quick. Trust me. So we ended up climbing down the cliff. It was mostly dirt and roots hanging out of the actual cliff face, or the cliff face. And so we would just slowly, come down off, like holding onto the roots and just like digging our hands and feet into the actual soil and just climb down that way. And it was perfectly fine. We got to the pond, playing with the frogs, and then it started actually getting dark, and so we decided to go back. Well, on the return climb up is whenever we ran into some problems. My cousin is significantly smaller than I am and always has been. She's very petite, and so I was the older cousin, and I was strong and sturdy, and so I was like, all right, here you go, baby girl. I'm gonna let you go ahead and climb up first to make sure you get up safe, and then I will climb up. And she was like, okay. She climbs up, everything's fine. At the very top, she was having a difficulty getting at the very top because there was this one root that was really thick, and it was sticking out kind of weird, and you had to grab it and lift yourself up essentially just with this one arm to get to the top and, to the 4-wheeler so we could return home. Well, on my climb, everything was going fine until I got to that one root at the very top that, was essential for pulling yourself up on. I guess she may have loosened it a little bit, but whenever I went to grab this one root, I remember I had this hand like shoved into the soil. I had my feet shoved into the soil. My right foot was on a stone, and I remember reaching up like this and grabbing the root and going to pull myself up. The root came right out, dude. It came right out. It was like broken off and old and nasty, and I remember I lost my balance, and I remember falling backwards like this and watching my cousin, who's like watching me like, oh my god, what's going on? What's gonna happen? And I remember falling back and being like, holy shit, it happened in slow motion, dude. It was like, it took like that long to fall 4 stories, but in my little 9-year-old brain, time stood still. I felt like Mufasa fell off the cliff, same way, and I was just like, oh no. Well, unlike Mufasa, spoiler alert, and I managed to, as I was falling, twist my body just enough to where I ended up landing on my hands and knees. So I was scared out of my mind. I remember landing and being like, I'm not alive. I remember just being like, holy shit, I'm dead. This is what it's like when you're dead. And I just started having this like little freak out, and it was adorable. And ended up being safe, and my cousin was freaking out. I ended up having to like console her more than like myself, because she was just like, oh my god, we're gonna get in so much trouble. Dude, that was insane. It was one of the first like near fatal accidents I've had. Like if I had just fell straight back, maybe I would have hit my head. Maybe I wouldn't be here today. Who knows? And I don't like to think about those things, so this is actually the perfect place to end this episode. Thank you guys so much. If you have had similar experiences and are comfortable sharing them in the comments, please do. I love hearing your stories. If you loved my stories, you can see previous episodes of Gettin' Smitten here, or you can click over here to subscribe. Fare thee well, nerds, and see you in the next video.